The fourth man. Canon Parfitt painted a little. Running for a train was not much of a business of a man of his age. For one thing, his figure was not what it was, and with the loss of his slender, went on increasing tendency to be short of breath. This tendency the canon himself always referred to with dignity as my heart. He sank into the corner of the first class carriage with a sign of relief. The warmth of the heater carriage was most agreeable to him. Outside the snow was falling. Lucky uh, to get a corner seat on a long night journey. Miserable business if you did not there ought to be a sleeper on this train. The other three corners were already occupied, and nothing his fact Canon Parfitt become aware that the man in the far corner was smiling at him in gentle recognition. He was a clean-shaven man with a quizzical face and hair just turning grey on the temple. His profession was so clearly the law that no one could have mistaken him from anything else for a moment. Sir George Durand was indeed a very famous lawyer. Well, Parfitt, he remarked generally. You had a run for it, didn't you? Very bad for my heart, I am afraid, said the canon. Quite a coincidence meeting you, Sir George. Are you going far north? No, Castle, said Sir George, iconically. But the way he added, do you know Dr. Campbell Clark? The man sitting on the same side of the carriage as the canon inclined his head pleasantly. We meet on the platform, continued the lawyer. Another coincidence, Canon Parfitt looked at the Dr. Campbell Clark with a good deal of interest. It was a man of which he had often heard. Dr. Clark was in the forefront as a physician and mental specialist, and his last book, The Problem of the Unconscious Mind, has been the most discussed book of the year. Canon Parfitt saw a square jaw, very steady blue eyes, and reddish hair touched by grey but thinning rapidly. And he received also the impression of a very forceful personality. By a perfectly natural acquisition of ideas, the canon looked across to the seat opposite him, half expecting to receive a glance of recognition there also. But the fourth occupant of the carriage proved to be a total stranger, a foreigner, the Canon Parfitt. He was a slight dark man, rather insignificant in appearance. Huddled in a big overcoat, he appeared to be fast asleep. Canon Parfitt of Bratchester inquired, Dr. Campbell Clark in a pleasant voice. The canon looked flattered. Those scientific sermons of his heart really made a great hit, especially since the press had taken them up. Well, that was what the crush needed. Good modern up to date stuff. I have read your book with great interest, Dr. Campbell Clark, he said. Though it's a bit technical here and there for me to follow, Durand broke in. Are you for talking or sleeping, Canon? He asked. I will confuse at once that I suffer from insomnia and that therefore I am a favor of the former. Ah, certainly. By all means, said the canon, I seldom sleep on these night journeys, And the book I have with me is a very dull one. We are at any rate a representative gathering, remarked at the doctor with a smile. The courage, the law, the medical profession. Not much. We couldn't give an opinion on between us. Ah, laughed Durand. The crutch for the spiritual views, myself for the purely worldly and legal view, and you, doctor, with widest field of all, ranging from the purely pathological to the super psychological. Between us three, we should cover any ground pretty completely, I fancy. Not so completely as you imagine, I think, said Dr. Clark. There's another point of view, that you left out, and that's rather an important one. Meaning, the lawyer. The point of view of the man in the street. Is that so important? Isn't the man in the street usually wrong? Almost always. But he has a thing that all expert opinion must lack, the personal point of view. In the end, you can't get away from personal relationship. I will found that in my profession. For every patient who comes to me genuinely ill, at least five come who have nothing. Whatever the matter with them, expect an inhabitability to live happily with the inmates of the life. They call it everything from big house maid's need to writer's cramp, but it's all the same thing. The raw surface produced by mind rubbing against mind. You have a lot of patients with nerves, I suppose. The canon remarked disappearingly his own nerves were excellent. Ah, and what do you mean by that? The other swung round on him, quick as flash. Nerves? People use that word and laugh after it, just as you did. Nothing the matter with so and so, they said. Just nerves. But good God, man, you were got the crux of everything there. You can get at a mere bodily element and heal it. But at this day, we know very little more about the obscure causes of the hundred and one form of nerves diseases than we did in, well, the region of Queen Elizabeth. Dear me, said Canon Parfitt, a little bewildered by this onslaught. Is that so? Mind you, it's sign of grace, Dr. Campbell Clark went on. In the old days, we considered man a simple animal, body and soul, with stress laid on the former. Body, soul, and spirit, corrected the clergyman middly. Spirit. The doctor smiled oddly. What do you person mean exactly by spirit? You are never been very clear about it. All down the edges you are funked on exact definition. The canon cleared his thought and preparation for speech, but to his chagrin he was given no opportunity. The doctor went on. Are we even sure the world is spirit? Might it not be spirits? Spirits, Sir George Durand questions, his eyebrows raised quizzically. Yes, Campbell Clark gaze transferred itself to him. He leaned forward and tapped the other man lightly on the breast. Are you so sure, he said gravely, that there is only one occupant of this structure? For that is all it is. This desirable residence to be let furnished for 7, 21, 41, 71, whatever it may be, years. And in the end, the talent moves his things out little by little and then goes out by the houses altogether. And down comes the houses, a mass of ruin and decay. You were the master of the house, we will admit that. But aren't you ever conscious of the pressure of the others? Soft footed servants hardly notice, except for the work they do. Work that you are not conscious of having done. Or friend, moods that take hold of you and make you, for the time being, a different man, as the saying goes. You were the king of the castle, right enough, but be very sure the dirty rascal is there too. My dear Clark, drawled the lawyer, you make me positively uncomfortable. Is my mind really a battleground of conflicting personalities? Is that science latest? It was the doctor's turn to shrug his shoulders. Your body is, he said dryly. If the body, why not the mind? Very interestingly, said Canon Parfitt. Ah, wonderful science, wonderful science. And inwardly he thought to himself, I can get a most interesting sermon not out of that idea. But Dr. Campbell Clark had leaned back in his seat, his momentary excitement spent. His momentary excitement spent. As a matter of fact, he remarked in a dry professional manner, it is a case of dual personality that takes me to Newcastle tonight. Very interesting case. Neurotic subjects, of course, but quite genuine. Dual personality? Said Sir George Durand thoughtfully. It's not very rare, I believe. There's loss of memory as well, isn't there? I know the matter cropped up in a case in the probate court the other order. The clerk nodded. The classic case? Of course, he said. Was that of Phyllis Bollet? You may remember hearing of it. Of course, said Canon Parfitt. I remember reading about it in the papers, but quite a long time ago. 7 years at least? Dr. Campbell Clark noted that girl became one of the most famous figures in France. Scientists from all over the world came to see her. She had no less than four distinct personalities. They were known as Phyllis 1, Phyllis 2, Phyllis 3, etc. Wasn't there some suggestions of deliberate trickery? Asked Sir George alertly. The personalities of Fallacy 3 and Fallacy 4 were a little open to doubt, admitted the doctor. But the man mean fact remains. Facilic Bolt was a brittle, pleasant girl. She was the third of a family of five, the daughter of a drunken father and a mentally defective mother. In one of his drinking bout, the father strangled the mother and was, if I remember rightly, transported for life. Felicie was then 5 years of age. Some charitable people interesting themselves in children, and Felicie was brought up and educated by an English maiden lady who had a kind of man for destitute children. Could make very little of Felicie, however, she describes the girl as abnormally slow and stupid, only taught to read and write with the greatest difficulty and clumsy with her hands. This lady, Miss Letter, tried to fit the girl for domestic service and did indeed find her several places when she was of an age to take them. But she never stayed long anywhere owing to her stupidity and also her intense laziness. The doctor paused for a minute and the canon, recrossing his legs and arranging his traveling rug more closely round him, was suddenly aware that the man opposite him had moved very slightly. His eyes, which had formerly been shut, were now open, and something in them, something mocking, undefinably startled the worthy canon. It was as though the man were listening and gloating secretly over what he heard. There is a photograph taken of Felicie Bolt at the age of 17, continued the doctor. It shows her as a loutish peasant girl, heavy of build. There is nothing in that picture to indicate that she was soon to be one of the most famous persons in France. 5 years later, when she was 22, Felicie Bolt had several nervous illness and no recovery. The strange phenomena began to manifest themselves. The following are facts arrested by many eminent scientists. The personality called Felicia I was undiscussable from the Felicia's bolt of the last 22 years. Felicia I wrote French badly and haltingly. She spoke no foreign languages and was unable to play the piano. Felicia II, on the contrary, spoke Italian fluently and German moderately. Her handwriting was quite dissimilar to that of Felicie I, and she wrote fluent and expensive French. She could discuss politics and art, and she was passionately fond of playing the piano. Felicie III had many points in common with Felicie II. She was intelligent and apparently well educated, but in moral character, she was a total contrast. She appeared in front an utterly depraved creature, but depraved in a presence and not a provisional way. She knew all the Paris orgut and the expressions of the chic damic monde. Her language was fertile, and she would rail against religion and so-called good people in the most blasphemous terms. Finally, there was Fallacy for a dreamily almost half-witted creature, distinctly poised and professedly clairvoyant. But this fourth personality was very unsatisfactory and elusive, and has been something thought to be a deliberate tricky on the part of Fallacy 3, a kind of joke played by her on a public. I may say that with the possible expectations of Fallacy 4, each personality was distinct and separate and had no knowledge of that. Fallacy 2 was undoubtedly the most predominant and would last sometimes for a fortnight at a time. Then Fallacy 1 would appear abruptly for a day or two. After that, perhaps Fallacy 3 or 4, but the two latter seldom remained in the command for more than a few hours. Each change was accompanied by several headache and heavy sleep, and in each case there was complete loss of memory of the other states. The personality in question taking up life where she had left it, unconscious of the passage of time. Remarkable, murmured the canon. Very remarkable, as yet we know next to nothing of the marvelous of the universe. We know that there are some very astute impostors in it, remarked the lawyer dryly. The case of the fallacy bolt was investigated by lawyers as well as by doctors and scientists, said Dr. Campbell Clark quickly. Matri Comblery, you remember, made the most thought investing. You remember, made the most thought investigation and confirmed the views of the scientists. And after all, why should it surprises us so much? We come across a double yolked egg. Do you want not? Do we not? And the twin bananas? Why not the double soul? In a single body, the double soul, protested the canon. Dr. Campbell Clark turned his blue eyes on him. What else we call it? That is to say, if the personality is the soul. It is a good thing such a state of affairs is only in the nature of a freak, remarked Sir George. If the case were common, it would give rise to pretty complications. The condition is, of course, quite abnormal, agreed the doctor. It was a great pity that a longer study could not have been made. But all that we put on and to by fallacies unexpected that there was something curious about that, if I remember rightly, said the lawyer slowly. Dr. Campbell Clark nodded. A most uncountable business. The girl was found one morning dead in bed. She had clearly been strangled, but to everyone's stupefaction, it was presently proved beyond doubt that she had actually strangled herself. The marks on her neck were those of her own fingers. A method of suicide which, thought not physically impossible, must have necessitated terrified muscular strength and almost superhuman willpower. What had driven the girl to say strategies he has never been found out. Of course, her mental balance must always have been precarious. Still, there it is. The curtain has been rung down forever on the mystery of Felicia's ball. It was then that the man in the far corner laughed. The other three men jumped as through shot. They had totally forgotten the existence of the fourth amongst them. As they started towards the place where he sat, Sid huddled in his overcoat, he laughed. You must excuse me, gentlemen, he said, in perfect English that had nevertheless a foreign flavor. He sat up, displaying a pale face with a small jet black mustache. Yes, you must excuse me, he said with a mock bow. But really, in science, is the last word ever said? You know something of the case we have been discussing? Asked the doctor courteously. Of the case, no, but I know her. Fallacy Bald. Yes, and anti reveal also. You have not heard to anti revel. I see. And yet, the story of the one is the story of the other. Believe me, you know nothing of Fallacy Bald if you do not also know the history of anti revel. He drew out his watch and looked at it. Just half an hour before the next stop, I have time to tell you the story. That is, if you care to hear it. Please tell it to us, said the doctor, quietly. Delighted, said the canon. Delighted, said George Durand, merely composed himself in an attitude of knee attention. My name, gentlemen, began their stranger traveling companion, is Raoul Rutagro. You have spoken much now of an English lady, Miss Slater, who interested herself in works of charity. I was born in that Brittany fishing village, and when my parents were both killed in a railway accident, it was Miss Slater who came to the rescue and saved me from the equivalent of your English workhouse. There were some 20 children under the care, girls and boys. Amongst these children were Fallacy Bald and Anity Revel. If I cannot make you understand the personality of Anity, gentlemen, you will understand nothing. She was a child of what you call a fille de joie, who had died of consumption abandoned by her lover. The mother had been a dancer, and Anity, too, had the desire to dance. When I saw her first, she was 11 years old, a little shrimp of a thing with eyes that alternatively mocked and promised. A little creature all fire and light. And at once, yes, at once, she made me her slave. It was Roll. Do this for me. Roll, do that for me. And me, I obeyed. Already I whispered her, and she knew it. We would go down to the shore together, we three, for Fallacy would come with us, and their vanity would pull off her shoes and shock and dance on the sand. And then, when she sank down breathlessly, she would tell us of what she meant to do and to be. See you, I shall be famous. Yes, exceedingly famous. I will have hundreds and thousands of silk stockers, the finest silk, and I shall live in a executive's apartment. All my lovers shall be young and handsome as well as being rich. And when I dance, all Paris shall come to see me. They will yell and call and shout and go mad over my dancing. And in the winters I shall not dance. I shall go south to the sunlight. There are wills there with orange trees. I shall have one of them. I shall lie in the sun and silk coaches. As for you, Roll, I will never forget you, however rich and famous I shall be. I will protect you and advance your career. Fallacy here shall be my maid. No, her hands are too clumsy. Look at them, how large and coarse they are. Fallacy would grow anger at that, and then Anity would go on teasing her. She is so ladylike, Fallacy, so elegant, so refined. She is a princess in distress. My father and my mother were married, which is more than yours were. Fallacy would growl out spitefully. Yes, and your father killed your mother. A pretty thing to be a murderer's daughter. Your father left your mother to rot. Fallacy would rejoin. Ah, yes, and they become the thoughtful. Power mammon one must keep strong and well. It is everything to keep strong and well. I am so strong as a horse, fallacy boasted, and indeed she was. She had twice the strength of any other girl in the home, and she was never ill. But she was stupid. You comprehend stupid like a burst pest. I often wonder why she followed Anity round as she did. It was with her a kind of fascination. Sometimes I think she actually hated Anity, and indeed Anity. She judged at her slowness and stupidity and baited her in front of the others. I have been fallacy grow quite white with rage. Sometimes I have thought that she would fasten her fingers around Anity's neck and choke it. She was not nimble witted enough to reply to Anity's taunts, but she did learn in times to make one retort with never failed. That was a reference of her own health and strength. She had learned what I had always known, that Anity invited her strong physically, and she struck instinctively at the weak spot in her enemy's aroma. One day Anity come to me in a great glee. Roar, she said. We will have fun today with that stupid fallacy. We shall die of laughing. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Come behind the little shed and I will tell you. I seemed that Anity had got hold of some book. Part of it she did not understand, and I indeed the whole thing was much over her head. It was an early early work on hypnotism. A bright object, they said, the brass knob of my bed. It whirls round. I made Fallacy look at it last night. Look at it steadily, I said. Do not take your eyes off it. And then I twirled it. Roll, I was frightened. Her eyes looked so cute, so cute. Fallacy, you will do what I say always, I said. I will do what you say always. Any day, she answered. And then, and then I said, tomorrow you will bring a tallow candle out into the playground at 12 o'clock and start to eat it. And if anyone asks you, you will say that is it the best glatty you ever tasted. Oh, Roll, think of it. But she will never do such a thing, I objected. The book says no. Not that I can quite believe it. But oh, Roll, if the book is all true, how we shall amuse ourselves? I, too, thought the idea very funny. We passed words around to the comrades, and at the 12 o'clock we were at it. Punctual to the minute, out come Fallacy with a stump of candle in her hand. Will you believe me? Measures. She began slowly to nibble at it. We were all in high hysterics. Ever now and then, one another of its children would go up to her and say slowly, "It is good what you eat there." Ah, fallacy. And she could answer, "But yes, it is the best galette I've ever tasted." And then we would share it with laughter. We laughed at last so loud that the noise seemed to wake up Fallacy to a realization of what she was doing. She blinked her eyes in a puzzled way, looked at the candle, then at us. She passed her hand over her forehead. "But what is it that I do here?" she muttered. "You are eating a candle," we screamed. "I made you do it. I made you do it," cried Annette, dancing about. Felicity stared for a moment. Then she went slowly up to Annette. So if so is you. It is you who have made me ridiculous. I seem to remember. I seem to remember. Ah, I will kill you for this. She spoke in a very quiet tone, but Annette rushed suddenly away and hid behind me. "Save me, Rolo. I am afraid of fallacy. It was only a joke, fallacy, only a joke." "I did not like these jokes," said Fallacy. "You understand? I hate you." "I hate you all." She suddenly burst out crying and rushed away. Annette was, I think, scared by the result of her experiment and did not try to repeat it. But from the day on, her ascendancy over fallacy seemed to grow stronger. Fallacy, I now believe, always hated her, but nevertheless she could not keep away from her. She used to follow Annette around like a dog. Soon after that, massive unemployment was found for me. I only come to the home for occasional holidays. Annette's desire to become a dancer was not taken seriously, but she developed a very pretty singing voice as she grew older. As Miss Salter consented to her being trained as a singer, she was not lazy. Annette, she worked feverishly once. Miss Settle was obliged to prevent her doing too much. She spoke to me once about her. "You have always been fond of Annette," she said. "Pursued her not to work too hard. She has a little coach later that I do not like. My work to my far affair soon offered. I received one or two letters from Annette at first, but then come silence. For 5 years after that, I was abroad quite by chance. When I returned to Paris, my attention was caught by absorter advertising Annette's reveille with a picture of the lady. I recognized her once. That night I went to the theater in question. Annette sang in French and Italian. One of the stage she was wonderful. On the stage she was wonderful. Afterward I went to her dressing room. She received me at once. "Why, Roll," she cried, stretching with out her whitened hands to me. "This is splendid. Where have you been all these years?" Where have you been all these years? I would have told her that she did not really want to listen. You see, I have very nearly arrived. She waved a triumphant hand around the room filled with buckets. The good Miss Slater must be a proud of your success, that old one. No, indeed, she disgusted me. For the conversatory, decorous concert singing, but me, I am an artist. It is here on the variety stage that I can express myself. Just then a handsome middle-aged man come in. He was very distinguished by his manner. I soon saw that he was an Eddie's protector. He looked sideways at me, and Andy explained, a friend of my infancy. He passes through Paris, sees my pictures on the poster. The man was then very affable and courteous. In my presence, he produced a ruby and diamond bracelet and clapped it an auntie's breast. And I rose to go. She threw me a glance of dimple and a whisper. I arrive, do I not? You see, all the world is before me. But as I left the room, I heard her coughs, a sharp, dry cough. I knew what it meant, that cough. I know what it meant, that cough. It was the legacy of her consumptive mother. I saw her next 2 years later. She had gone for refuge to Miss Slater. Her career had broken down. She was in a state of advanced consumption for which the doctor said nothing could be done. Ah, I shall never forget her as I saw her then. She was lying in a kind of shelter in the garden. She was kept outdoors night and day. Her cheeks were hollow and flushed, her eyes bright and swellish, and she coughed repeatedly. She greeted me with a kind of dispersion that startled me. It is good to see you, Hollow. You know what they say? That I may not get well. That I may not get well. They say it behind my back, you understand, to me. They are soothing and consolatory, but it is not true, Roll. It is not true. I shall not permit myself to die. Die? With beautiful life stretching in front of me. It is the will to live that matters. All the great doctors say that nowadays. I am not one of the feeble ones who let go. Already I feel myself infinitely better. Infinitely better. Do you hear? I am. She raised herself on her elbow to drive her words home, then fell back, attacked by a fit of coughing that wrecked her thin body. The cough? It is nothing, she gasped. And here more hitches. Do not frighten me. I shall surprise the doctors. It is the will that counts. Remember, all I am going to live. It was pitiful. You understand? Pitiful. Just then Felicity Bott came out with a tray, a glass of hot milk. She gave it to Anity and watched her drink it with an expansion that I could not fathom. There was kind of smug satisfaction in it. Anity took off, cuffed the look. She flung the glass down angrily so that it ashamed to bits. That is how she always look at me. She is glad I am going to die. Yes. She gloats over it. She who is well and strong. Look at her nowadays illness, that one and all for nothing. What good is that great carcass of hers to her? What can she make of it? Felicity stooped and picked up the broken fragments of glass. I do not mind what she says, she observed in a sing-sang voice. What does it matter? I am a respectable girl, I am. As for her, she will be knowing the fires of purgatory before her long. I am Christian. I say nothing. You hate me, cried Anity. You have always hated me. Ah, but I can charm you all the same. I can make you do what I want. See now, if I ask you to do, you would go down on your knees before me now on the grace. You are absurd, said Fallacy uneasily. But yes, you will do it. You will. To please me, down on your knees, I ask it of you. I need it. Down on your knees, Fallacy. Whether it was the wonderful pleading in the voice. So some deeper motive, Fallacy obeyed. She sank slowly to her knees, her arms spread wide, her face vacant and stupid. Andrew flung her head back and laughed. Peal upon peal of laughter. Look at her with her stupid face. How ridiculous she looks. You can get up now, Fallacy. Thank you. It is of no use to scold at me. I am your mistress. You have to do what I say. She lay back on her pillows, exhausted. Felicity picked up the tray and moved slowly away. Once she looked back over her shoulder and the smoldering rest- resentment in her eyes startled me. I was not there when Anity died, but it was terrible it sees. She clung to life. She fought against death like a madwoman. Again and again she gasped out, I will not die. Do you hear me? I will not die. I will live. Live. Miss Letter told me all this when I come to see her 6 months later. My poor Roll, she said kindly, you loved her. Did you not? Always, always. But of what use could I be to her? Let us not talk of it. She is dead. She is so brilliant, so full of burning life. Miss Slater was a sympathetic woman. She went on to talk of other things. She was very worried about fallacy, so she told me. The girl had had a cure sort of nervous breakdowns, and ever since she had been very strange in manner. You know, said Miss Slater after a momentary hesitation, had she is learning the piano? I did not know it and was very much surprised to hear it. Fallacy, learning the piano, I would have declared the girl would not know one note from another. She had talent, they say, continued Miss Latter. I cannot understand it. I have always put her down as well, Roll. You know yourself, she was always a stupid girl. I noted she is so strange in her manner sometimes. I really don't know what to make of it. A few minutes later, I entered the salle de lecture. Felicity was playing the piano. She was playing the air that I had heard Annette sing in Paris. You understand, Amateurs, it gave me quite a turn. And then, hearing me, she broke off suddenly and looked around me, her eyes full of mockery and intelligence. For a moment, I thought, well, I will not tell you what I thought. Dennis, she said, so it is you, Monsieur Rollo. I cannot describe the way she said it. To Anity, I had never guessed to be Roll, but Felicity, since we had met as grown ups, always dressed me as a Monsieur Roll. But the way she said it now was different, as thought slightly stressed was somehow very amusing. Why, Felicity? I stammered. You look quite different today, do I? She said effectively. It is odd that, but do not be so solemn. Roll, decidedly. I shall call you Roll. Did you not play together as children? Life was made for laughter. Let us talk of the poor Anity, she who is dead and buried. Is she in purgatory? I wonder. Or where? And she hummed a snatch of song untunefully enough. But the words are changed. Fallacy, I cried. You speak Italian? Why not roll? I'm not as stupid as I pretended to be. Perhaps she taught at my mystifications. I don't understand, I began. But I will tell you I am a very fine actress, though no one suspected. I can play many parts and play them very well. She laughed again and ran quickly out of the room before I could stop her. I saw her again before I left. She was asleep in an armchair. She was snoring heavily. I stood and watched her, fascinated yet repelled. Suddenly she woke with a start, her eyes dull and lifeless, met mine. Roll, she muted mechanically. Yes, Fallacy, I am going now. Will you play to me again before I go? I? Play? You are laughing at me? Roll, don't you remember playing to me this morning? She shook her head. I play. How can a poor girl like me play? She paused for a minute as thought in thought, then beckoned me. Monsieur Roll, there are stranger things going on at this house. The play tricks upon you. The elder the clocks. Yes, yes, I know what I am saying, and it is all her doing. Who's doing? I asked startledly. That Annalise, that wicked once when she was alive, she always tormented me. Now that she is dead, she comes back from the dead to torment. I stared at Pharisee. I could see now that she was in an extremity of terror, her eyes straying from me. She is bad, that one, she is bad. I tell you, she would take the bread from your mouth, the clothes from your back, and soul from your body. She clutched at me suddenly. I am afraid, I tell you, afraid. I hear her voice, not in my ear. No, not in my ear, here. is my head. She tapped her forehead. She will drive me away altogether, and then what shall I do? What will become of me? Her voice rose almost to a shriek. She had in her eyes the look of the terrified brute best at bay. Suddenly she smiled, a pleasant smile full of cunning with something in it that made me shiver. If it should come to it, Monsieur Roll, I am very strong with my hands, very strong with my hands. I had never noticed her hands particularly before. I looked at them now and shuddered in spite of movement. Square, brutal fingers, and as Felicity had said, terribly strong. I cannot explain to you the nausea that it. With hands such as these, her father must have strangled her mother. That was the last time I ever saw Felicity Bolt. Immediately afterward, I went abroad to South Africa. I returned from there 2 years after her death. Sometimes I heard read in the newspaper of her life and sudden death. I have heard fuller details tonight from you, gentlemen. Fallacy 3 and Fallacy 4. I wonder. She was a good actress, you know? The train suddenly slackened speed, and the man in the corner sat erect and buttoned his overcoat more closely. What is your theory? Asked the lawyer, leaning forward. I can hardly believe, began Canon Parfitt and stopped. The doctor said nothing. He was gazing steadily at Roll Liperger. The clothes from your back, the soul from your body, quoted the Frenchman lightly. He stood up. I say to you, Monsieur, that the history of Fallacy Ball is the history of Anity Revel. You did not know her, gentlemen. I did. She was very fond of life. His hand on the door, ready to spring out, he turned suddenly and, bending down, tapped Canon Parfitt on the chest. Like doctor over there, he said just now that all this. His hand smote the cannon's stomach, and the cannon, which was only a residence. Tell me, if you find a burglar in your house, what do you do? Shout him, do you not? No, cried the cannon. No, indeed, I mean, not in this country. But he spoke the last words to empty air. The carriage door banged. The gentleman, the lawyer, and the doctor were alone. The fourth corner was vacant. End of the fourth man.